Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, for calling on me. First of all, I'd like to congratulate all those who've made their maiden speeches today. It's made the afternoon fly by, such has been the quality of so many of them. I'd also like to express my wholehearted support for the vision for UK aid outlined by my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for International Development, especially insofar as that vision is driven by a desire to focus the UK programme on outcomes and value for money, rather than just inputs and quantities of money being shoveled overseas. I particularly welcome his comment that he intends to review the UK aid relationship with India. As the Secretary of State said, there is now a double duty to demonstrate that aid money is not just well spent, but also spent where it is needed, in order that the government can carry the country with it at a time of intense budgetary squeeze and retrenchment. Under the coalition government, the Department for International Development is already curtailing aid to China and Russia and promising much greater value for money. I personally believe it is time to scale back DFID's substantial India programme, and that is something of a response to the question posed to the opposition benches by the Honourable Member for Banbury earlier on, where he was asking where money might be saved in the DFID budget. Looking at DFID's expenditure, this programme, the India programme, is the aid agency's single largest country programme by quite some distance. It is worth £825 million over the 3 years to 2011. That means, by my calculations, that the flow of grant aid from the UK to India is greater now than it has been at any point for at least the last 20 years, and although I can't trace the figures, perhaps also at any time since independence in 1947. Defenders of the aid programme to India can legitimately argue that progress towards meeting the Millennium Development Goals by 2015 hinges on India, and that's quite right. But nuclear-powered India can now fund its own development needs, considerable though they are, in a country that's home to 450 million poor and a third of the world's malnourished children. India, for those of you who follow it, will know India has a defence budget of $31.5 billion, and as the Honourable Member for Bournemouth mentioned earlier, it has a very ambitious space programme, including plans for an unmanned moonshot, as well, of course, as a substantial aid programme of its own. India is obviously not yet at China's level of development. India is not China, but it is a claimant to a permanent Security Council seat and a claimant to a place at the top table of world affairs. As such, it's hardly a natural aid recipient. The moral arguments are, of course, very finely balanced. A poor person is a poor person is a poor person wherever he or she is in the world. But to my mind, common sense suggests it's a better idea for the UK to prioritise aid to countries that cannot afford to fund their development over those that take the money just because it is going free. Many other donor countries have in recent years either been kicked out of India for being too small, managing their donations is simply too bureaucratic and cumbersome a process to be worth the Indian government's while, or, like the US, whose aid flows peaked 50 years ago in 1960, they have stated that they are, quote, walking the last mile in India. The result, Madam Deputy Speaker, is that the UK, perhaps inappropriately, now accounts for as much as 30% of all foreign aid to India. This is arguably money that New Delhi could allocate to its own development if it chose to do so. My view is that we must, as the coalition programme states, work towards a new partnership with India for the 21st century, a new special relationship, as the Conservative manifesto originally put it. But it must be based on strong bonds of trade, not anachronistic ones of aid that hark back to a previous relationship between our two countries. Thank you.
Yeah.